Greetings and welcome back to another exciting episode of To The Point, the chess program where we examine crimes in the opening and discover the most exact tactical punishments. I am your host, Chris Torres, and today we will be learning from a 400-year-old masterpiece by the esteemed chess player Gioachino Greco. Gioachino Greco was born in 1600 in Celico, a village near Cosenza, Italy. As a child, Greco took a keen interest in the game of chess and left home to take lessons with Don Mariano Marano, a Sicilian priest and strong chess player. Before long, Greco's exceptional talent made him a feared opponent at the chessboard and a celebrated lecturer to those wanting to improve their game. Greco began traveling to different villages in search of stronger opposition and new students. During this time, he earns a handsome sum of money, as well as the nickname Il Calabrese, which in English translates to the Calabrian, after the region in southern Italy he hailed from. Thus, the Calabrian became the first true chess professional. At the age of 20, Gioachino Greco's chess had progressed enough that he composed his first original copy of Trattato del Nobilissimo Gioco di Scacchi, duplicates of which were given to his benefactors in Rome. After conquering every region of Italy and with loads of money from his patrons, it was time for the Calabrian to take on France. Greco made the long trip to Paris, and along the way he continued producing amazing victories over the chessboard. In Paris, his triumphs over the strongest French chess players of the time, among them the Duc de Nemours, Marquis Arnaud Le Chabron, and Marquis Chamont de la Salle, gained him both popularity and wealth. By 1622, Greco was venturing out to England with an extra 5,000 gold coins. Of course, traveling the countryside with a large sum of money is a risky proposition, and especially so for a foreigner in the 17th century. So it was unfortunate but not unexpected that Greco was robbed by bandits of his newfound wealth and notebooks. During his stay in London, Greco reconstructed his games from memory and re-recorded them for study. Before Greco, a strong chess master might record an instructive position, but no one recorded entire games for future reference. A traveler at heart, Greco returned to Paris to fill up on gold and then ventured off to Spain to perform in the court of King Philip IV. After taking on all the challengers, an old man wandered up to Greco and demanded his turn against the Calabrian. It was his old chess teacher, Don Mariano Marano. And so it was fitting that after defeating all challengers in Rome, Paris, London, and Madrid, his journey had come full circle to face the teacher who had taught him so well as a child. Don Mariano Marano must have felt great pride at knowing that not only had his former student surpassed him, but had also become the strongest chess player in all of Europe. Having traveled the old world and proven himself to be the best at chess, Greco took keen interest in the explorers' tales of the New World. Greco made the long voyage to the Americas, but sadly surrendered to sickness in the West Indies not long after showing up. The specific date of Greco's passing is unknown. However, he was dead by 1634, and in a final nod to his mentor, Greco left his entire chess fortune to the group of Jesuit priests that Don Mariano Marano belonged to. In 1656, years after his death, much of Greco's work was collected and republished as the Royal Game of Chesse-Play by Francis Beale in London. Nearly all of Francis Beale's best-selling book was directly translated from Gioachino Greco's manuscript on chess and was reissued in 1750 and 1819. Before Greco, no incredible corpus of chess information had ever been amassed, and his collection of games in important positions became the main source of written chess knowledge for the next 2 centuries. It is thus that Greco's games and positions ought to be comprehended not just as examples of his tremendous skill, but also the life's work of a splendid inventor and pioneer who changed the game of chess forever. Now that we know more about Gioachino Greco, let's review our 10 opening rules and see the master in action. The 10 opening rules are: Number 1, open with a center pawn. Number 2, develop with threats. Number 3, knights before bishops. Number 4, don't move the same piece twice. Number 5, make as few pawn moves as possible in the opening. Number 6, don't bring your queen out too early. Number 7, castle as soon as possible, preferably on the king side. Number 8, always play to gain control of the center. Number 9, try to maintain at least one pawn in the center. Number 10, don't sacrifice without a clear and adequate reason. And now to our feature game. Gioachino Greco starts by putting a pawn in the center. That's right, even 400 years ago, putting a pawn in the center was important. His opponent uses a so-called hypermodern strategy, although we see now it's 400 years old. Hard to call that hypermodern. But the plan is to put a bishop in the house and have the bishop dominate a long diagonal. Greco, seeing that his opponent did not meet him in the center, gets a second pawn, places a second pawn in the center, taking complete control. Bishop b7, there's that long diagonal. Greco plays bishop d3, purposefully creating extra imbalances by leaving g2 as a target for black's bishop. Even 400 years after Greco played it, this is still the most popular move for white. Now, when you're playing a famous or very strong chess player, you need to play aggressively if you want to have a chance and at least gain their respect. His opponent plays f5, which is very aggressive. Look at all the lines of attack f5 opens. First of all, f5 creates even more exposure for the weak pawn on g2. Plus, it exposes black's own king to the potential of queen h5, check. Very exciting move. Greco played ex-f5, and bishop takes g2. Queen h5 check is what Greco played. I can hear it now, the chorus of my students saying, don't bring your queen out too early. But after your opponent has ignored the center and moved Freddy, his f-pawn, punishments must be analyzed, and the best punishment here is checking with the queen. g6 is forced, fx g6, knight f6, interesting, developing with a threat against the queen. I'll give you a few seconds to try and guess Greco's move. If you guess gx h7 check, you are correct. But wait, doesn't that just give away your queen? In fact, it does. Black has to take your queen. And now, what do you think Greco played? I'll give you just a few seconds. Why, bishop g6 checkmate, of course. Now, getting back to the earlier parts of the game, let's look at a couple what-ifs. So Greco started with e4. His opponent played b6, d4, complete control of the center, bishop b7, fianchettoing the bishop, bishop d3, we've talked about this, f5. But what if they didn't play f5? A while back, an opponent of mine played knight f6 here, and as you can see, that really doesn't cause a lot of problems for white. We can simply play, or at least I did, I played knight c3, he played e6, knight f3. I'm ready to castle, I'm controlling the center, I have 3 pieces developed, I'm happy. No problem. So again, back to the main game. e4, b6, d4, bishop b7, bishop d3, f5, ex f5, bishop takes g2, queen h5 check, g6 is forced, fx g6. And right here, we have the first major threat to Greco's trap. Instead of knight f6, what would have happened if black played bishop g7? Interesting stuff. I think gx-h7 check is best. King f8 is forced. Knight f3 is called for. Why is knight f3 called for? Well, because if you were to simply play hxg8 queen, black would play king hg8, queen g4, bishop takes h1, and white only has a tiny advantage, nothing really to write home about. So we get back to the knight f3, which was called for, and black can now play knight f6. Again, bishop takes h1 would be a tremendous mistake. We have knight e5 threatening checkmate. Queen e8 stopping checkmate. But h takes g8 equals queen, check. Rook takes g8. Queen f5, check. Bishop f6. Bishop h6, check. We can continue to keep bringing the heat. Rook blocks with g7. Bishop takes g7, check. King takes g7. Queen h7, check. King f8. Bishop g6. Notice how every move is a check or a major threat. Bishop e4. Queen h6, check. Bishop g7 blocking. Queen f4, check. Bishop f6. And thank you for the queen. Of course, let's get back to another what if and refresh your memories. e4, b6, d4, bishop b7, bishop d3, f5, ex f5, bishop takes g2, queen h5, check, g6, fx g6, bishop g7 again, and then gx h7, check, king f8, knight f3, knight f6 this time, queen g6. Interesting move, and you'll see why in a moment. Bishop takes f3, rook g1. Now you see why we put our queen on g6. We are threatening the bishop on g7 with check, plus other fun stuff. Rook takes h7. Black gets rid of one threat and defends against the other. Queen g3. We keep attacking. Bishop e4. Bishop takes e4. Fun stuff here. Just look at that for a moment. We are threatening the bishop on g7 with a battery of a rook and a queen. It is defended by a rook, but the rook that's defending it is now being threatened by a bishop. Knight takes e4. Queen f3. Nice little fork there. King g8. Queen takes e4. d5. Gaining a pawn in the center, attacking our queen. But we've got queen e6. King h8. Knight c3, developing another piece. And white has a nice little advantage in material development and king safety. All right, so one last what if. Honestly, I could spend probably a half hour going through variations from this game, but that is not the purpose of these lessons. This show is called To the Point. e4, b6, d4, these are just the opening moves of the game again. And we've seen this, and then we get to 6, bishop g7, gx h7, check, king f8, knight f3, and then finally I have one really fun variation. After 8, knight f6, and 9, queen g6, bishop takes f3, and here bishop takes h1, still a mistake. Bishop, because we could still play bishop h6. Rook takes on h7 to defend against checkmate. Knight goes to g5 to create another checkmate threat. King goes to g8. Knight goes to h7. Not just capturing a rook, but now also threatening checkmate on g7. Knight e8 to defend g7. Knight g5, leading to a favorite continuation of mine. e5. Queen takes h7, check. King has to go to f8. Bishop takes g7, check. Knight takes g7. Queen goes to h8, check. King goes to e7. You guessed it. QX g7, check. King d6. Knight f7, check, fork. King e7. Knight takes d8. King e8. Queen f7, check. King takes d8. Queen f8, check, mate. Now, real fast, let's go back to the main game, Greco versus amateur, played in Rome in 1619. So we can see Il Calabrese in all his glory one last time. e4, b6, d4, bishop b7, putting the bishop, fianchettoing the bishop. White has 2 pawns in the center. Black's using fianchettoed bishop. Strong chess players still have these arguments in the opening to this day. Bishop d3, f5. Look at all the fun attacking lines. ex f5, bishop takes g2. Queen h5, check. g6, fx g6. Knight f6, attacking the queen. Greco does not care. Gioachino Greco does not care. He plays gx-h7, check. Knight takes h5. And then he finishes with bishop g6. What a splendid game from over 400 years ago that I am still learning so much from. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. My name is Chris Torres, and this has been To The Point.